Doc, good morning. It's nice to have you back in the good old U.S. of A. How was your trip?
It was fantastic, man. We went to Italy 2 weeks. I recommend it highly.
Where did you go in Italy?
We went a week on the Italian Riviera.
Boy, that's a
Right?
guy like you belongs on the Italian.
Yeah, right.
When
Yeah.
I think of the Italian Riviera, I think of
think of
Paul
me.
Daugherty.
Yeah, it sounds big time. It's actually just a nice beach area. We went there for a week, and then we went to Tuscany and drank a bunch of wine for the other week. And two completely different places, man. One was very busy, hectic, loud, beautiful, the beach, and the other was just out in the middle of Italian countryside nowhere. And it was,
Just you and
I
your
can't,
bride, or what? I mean, how many people went along on this deal?
yeah, Carrie, myself, and our son Kelly went.
Wow, fantastic. Well, welcome back. We're glad you're safe. Glad you had a great time. Memories that'll last a lifetime, no doubt, right?
Yeah, no doubt.
Listen, before we get to the Reds, do you read The Athletic?
Sure.
Okay. Did you read the article today written by Paul Dehner Jr. with Corey Dillon?
No.
Okay.
Didn't get to that yet.
You got to read it, and then we'll have you back, and I'm going to ask you your thoughts on it. But here, basically, in a nutshell, I mean, littered with F-bombs, and in a day and age where every single athlete virtually you talk to, won't say anything. No waves, no ripples, for crying out loud, right? This guy is asked about the Bengals Ring of Honor and the Hall of Fame. And Dehner Jr. lays out all of these statistics over Corey Dillon's career. And when you read those statistics and you read the 10 guys in the history of football that meet his yards per carry, his total yards rushing, and his yards rushing per game, he is one of 10 guys that meets this certain threshold, and the other 8 in the Hall of Fame are in the Hall of Fame, and he's not even getting a sniff. The same thing for the Bengals Ring of Honor. And he goes on to talk about season ticket holders should not be voting on this, that a lot of those people never saw him or Bob Trumpy or a bunch of other guys even play. Corey Dillon, for you, you covered this guy his entire career. What are your thoughts on Corey Dillon? A lot of people feel like some of his off-the-field stuff is what has kept him from being honored, whether it be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame or maybe even this Bengals Ring of Honor.
He was the best Bengals running back I've ever seen. I used to write that he ran angry. He ran mean. I've never seen another guy run angrier than Corey Dillon. He seemed to be mad at the world most of the time. That said, his career here was beyond legit, and it's just his fate that he played here on usually bad football teams. And the Bengals, as we know, historically have not done a lot to boost the Hall of Fame prospects of their guys. I don't know if he belongs in the Hall of Fame or not, frankly. I haven't read the story. I've never really done a deep dive on Corey Dillon's numbers in relation to everybody else's. I will only say that he was the best Bengals running back I've ever seen, and he was highly cantankerous, put it that way.
Yes.
Wasn't the easiest guy to deal with. It's funny, when he came back, it was a couple of years ago, and we had him on the show, the Beyond the Stripes show that the Inquirer used to do down at Moorline, among other places, and he was our guest. Could not have been nicer.
Yeah.
Sweetest guy ever. People just, they mature at different levels, at different times, at different rates, right? Corey was not the most mature guy as a player in Cincinnati, but that didn't detract. In fact, it may have helped him become the running back that he was. And once he got to New England, he got himself a Super Bowl ring, and nobody can take that away from him. I got nothing but great things to say about Corey Dillon, the football player.
Yeah, I mean, I got to tell you, this article is, I don't know if I, like I said, I don't know if I've read anything quite like this in a long, long time. He made Paul Dehner Jr. Basically verbatim, just print in this story every single thing that he said. Everything. And it was, whoa. I mean, and he basically concluded it by saying, and Cincinnati isn't the only place I'm about to go off on, because if somebody from New England asks me about it, I'm going to say the same thing. So that was that. Anyway, I'm curious. If you had, and I don't know how much attention you've paid to this, Doc, the season ticket holders are the ones, or the suite holders too, are voting on the Bengals Ring of Honor. We had Bob Trumpy on the show last week. You used to do sports talk on WLW for a number of years. Trump was a guy who basically, was the granddaddy of them all, of that show, going back to the late 70s and the 80s and the 90s, et cetera, et cetera. If you had to vote to put in 2 or 3 of those guys who are up, and it's probably unfair of me to ask you because you may not have it in front of you, you may not even be paying attention to it. Who are the next 2 or 3 guys for you? You've been here 30 plus years that should be in that Bengals Ring of Honor.
I don't know. Like you said, I'm not paying attention to it because I don't vote on it. But give me some names and I'll tell you.
Okay. Well, you got Corey Dillon, you got Chad Johnson, Chad Ochocinco.
Yes.
You go back to Boomer Esiason. You've got Max Montoya. You've got Dave Lapham. You have, help me here, fellas. You got Bob Trumpy. I said him, Bob Trumpy. Who else? I mean, there are others. Am I forget?
Dave. Did you say Dave?
I said Dave Lapham.
Willie got in last year.
Willie got in last year. Right. Boomer, Chris Collinsworth, Boomer Esiason. Jim Breach, Tim Crumry. I know you were a big Crumry fan. Who?
Max Montoya.
Yeah, Max Montoya, right. David Fulcher, Leapin Lamar Parrish. So basically, those are your guys. If you had to pick, and I know I'm throwing you on the spot here, and you weren't here for the Leapin Lamar Parishes of the world. James Brooks, was he on that list, I hope?
He was.
Yeah, James, what an unbelievable player he was. He was the best Bengals running back I ever saw. But anyway, Doc, any of those jump off and you say to yourself they got to be in?
Well, I wrote this a month or two ago. I think Dave Lapham is number one front and center. A lot of people don't agree with that. Dave is a good player, not a great player. But in terms of what he represents to that franchise and who he is and what he continues to do, I don't think there's any question that Dave Lapham belongs in any Bengals Hall of Fame. I mean, it's like your dad, Thom, like your dad not being in the Reds Hall of Fame. Why would he not be in the Reds Hall of Fame?
Yeah.
Why would Dave Lapham not be in the Bengals Hall of Fame? He is as representative of the Bengals franchise as Marty was of the Reds franchise. So I'd go with him. Like I said, Corey Dillon, best running back I ever saw here, and I've seen a few, so he goes in. I don't think there's any question that Chad goes in. After that, I guess it depends on, at least for me personally, I applied the same sort of logic to the Baseball Hall of Fame, which I still vote on. How do you define Hall of Famer? And does the more people you allow in, does it cheapen being in the Hall of Fame? And I think you have to look at it from that perspective. And you might have a tighter set of qualifications, shall we say. But the guys that I mentioned, I think are hands down. Corey, Chad, and Lap all belong in there.
Yeah, the one guy I had is a lock to be in there because, look, you can sit here and debate. You said Corey Dillon, I said James Brooks, but I had moved away by the time Dillon really got going and wasn't watching him every week. And numbers-wise, he by far has the best numbers. The same for Chad Ochocinco as far as wide receiver is concerned. But, you can sit there and debate who the greatest wide receiver is in the history of the Bengals. You can debate who the best running back is. There is zero debate on who the best tight end is. And you go back, and we had Trumpy on last week, and I was doing some research and looking at some of the numbers, and I'm like, are you kidding me? I mean, this guy was just, without a doubt, the best tight end the Bengals ever had and really revolutionized the game of football playing for Paul Brown. First tight end ever in the history of football, ever, that did not line up next to the tackle. He would be split into the slot because he was such a great athlete. Anyway, okay, I want to get to the Reds.
Yeah.
Doc, you and I talked about this when the season began. Nobody saw this coming. What
No.
are your thoughts of this team and watching what has transpired really over the last month? McLean comes up, De La Cruz comes up, Abbott comes up, and off they go.
It's absolutely stunning. I mean, I've been here since 1988. I've certainly never seen anything like it here. And I'm sure there are other places that have brought kids up like this and elevated the team far beyond anybody's imagination. But I don't know other places. I know this place. It is beyond belief. I mean, I wrote about this the other day, Thom. We all think we're so smart about this stuff. I probably wrote half a dozen times last winter wondering where the Reds were going to get their offense.
Yep.
I said, this team is going to lose a lot of 3-2 games. Yeah, that made a lot of sense, didn't it? The pitching would be, Lodolo, Green, Ashcraft would be the key to the season. Their progress would define whether this season would be a success or a failure. Well, now that the Reds have blasted off, really without much contribution from any of those guys, put that on the list of things we had no idea what we were talking about, or at least I didn't. I'm amazed by a few things. One is that the attitude that they have fostered since spring training and maintained through the ups and the downs, and continue to play in a way that makes their opponents sometimes embarrassingly flat-footed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm watching them play the Nationals yesterday and throughout the weekend, and the Nationals just don't look like they want to be there in comparison with the Reds. And it's not just,
I agree.
It's not just taking the extra base or being really fast and stealing lots of bases, because that's athleticism, and anybody can do that. I won't say anybody, but anybody with the kind of speed can steal a lot of bases. But they just play with this sort of abandon that catches other teams off guard. I don't know why more teams haven't done it, frankly. Maybe they don't have the collective athleticism that this team does, but you can try it. The old Scott Rowland needs you on third, Brucey attitude, that doesn't require athleticism. That's a mindset. And I'm also thinking, and maybe somebody's written about this and I've missed it, this stuff didn't just show up when these guys got to Cincinnati, right? I saw them try 2 bunts in 2 innings last week. I don't think they tried 2 bunts all year last year. The emphasis on fundamentals, they seem not to make mistakes in the field. They don't often throw to the wrong base. They do things right almost all the time, and that just didn't appear here. I'd really be interested in reading what's going on at the minor league level, because you and I both recall that some of the biggest complaints about this organization in the last 20 years is there was no consistency as to how they did things in the minor leagues, the so-called Reds way. What was the Reds way? Brian Price used to bitch that, we got all these starting pitchers who come up here and can't throw a changeup. Why weren't they taught to throw a changeup when they were in the minor leagues?
Right.
And they seem to have found this consistency in what they're teaching and what their philosophy is, so that guys like McLean and De La Cruz and probably Encarnacion Strand, when he comes up here, they all play this way. They play with a consistently sound, fundamental approach. They don't give away at bats. I saw the Nationals swing at some terrible pitches yesterday off Ashcraft. They don't seem to do that a lot. They move runners over. They get them on, get them over, get them in. This is learned behavior, Thom. These guys don't show up in Daytona Beach or wherever having this already. So I'd really like to know what's going on at the minor league level with this team.
Well, this is where, and I have told this story many, many times on this show and away from this show, where when Nick Krall got the job, and you know this, Doc, and it doesn't always mean the old timers are the be all end all. But I remember being at the ballpark when Nick Kroll got the job and how a number of scouts that had been around baseball a long time, legendary scouts from different franchises, and sitting in the media room having dinner. And I always used to love, from time to time, sitting down with about 4 or 5 of those guys and just catching up and saying hello and talking baseball, blah, blah, blah. Each one of those guys said to me, aside from everybody else, they're like, you guys have really made the right move here by hiring Nick Kroll. There are a lot of people out there, maybe some of the new analytics guys, but certainly I can only speak to some of the old-timer guys that felt like there were a lot of people thinking that this was the right guy for the right job, and all of the things you just talked about, he has to have some hand in this.
No question. I'm really happy for Nick. One, he's a humble guy.
Yep.
And two, he's paid his dues. You know, he's one of those guys that started at the bottom and just kept working, and now he is where he is, and he deserves to be where he is. And I saw the other day, made me chuckle, Jim Bowden of all people saying that he should be executive of the year. Bowden had some good years here.
Yes, he did.
Didn't accomplish them quite the way that Nick Kroll has, but anyway, yeah, I think he's right, though. I think Nick and David Bell are lifers, and they know what they know, and they seem pretty confident about what they know, and it's paying dividends, and we can only hope that, one, they can be kept here, and two, they be allowed to finish what they've started.
Well, the David Bell thing, his contract is up at the end of the year. There are a lot of people out there, you know, when you play this well, and you know how this goes. I mean, when things are going good, you want to give everybody a contract and sign them to a long-term deal and blah, 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 and then you do it. And in a year from now, if you turn out to be the St. Louis Cardinals of this year, people are wondering why in the hell did we do A, B, C, and D. We'll find out what happens with Bell. He's done a great job. There's no doubt about it. But you just mentioned Jim Bowden. Look, I know a lot of people don't like him. He's always been good to me every single time I've ever dealt with a guy. And I've always said that if you gave him an owner that would give him some rope, this guy would put together a championship team. In my opinion, even though they didn't win it, that 1995 team was better than the 1990 team that won the World Series, I thought. And one of the big reasons that team, you remember, Doc, I mean, when he pulled off the deals going down the stretch there for David Wells, one of the top pitchers in the game, Mark Portugal, outstanding pitcher for many years with the Giants, and he brings in Dillon. When that's the – I don't know at that level, but in my opinion, and I think you agree, I'm sure you've written about it, I think this is a year the Reds got to wheel and deal to try and go for it and win it all. I look at the National League, and I don't see juggernauts out there, Doc. I don't see them. The Dodgers, the Kershaw's hurt. The 4/5 of their starting row. In fact, all 5 of their starters that began the year are all out injured. They are not a juggernaut. The Diamondbacks are having a good year. They're not a juggernaut. Miami's having a good year. They're not a juggernaut. Anybody in this National League with decent starting pitching, I think the Reds can beat them.
I think the Braves are clearly the class of the league.
Yeah, they're the best of the no doubt about it. They're in a separate category. Yeah.
But I agree with you, and I've said this forever. If you have a chance to win something, go try to win it, and that applies more in baseball than in football, for example, because the economics being what they are. If you're a small money team, your odds of being in this position are not high. And this is the year to take advantage of that. And you're right. And it's obvious what the Reds need, and it's obvious what they have a surplus of. You know, it's not as if, well, we got to think about this and where do we want to lose guys and we're not sure what exactly do we need. It's obvious what they need, you know, and it's obvious that they've got the trade bait to get what they need. It's just a question of whether they want to do it. And whether they can find a suitable partner. People sometimes forget that, you know, there's another team involved in this too, you know, and they want something back, and maybe what they want back is excessive now. But I think, I agree with you completely. If ever the Reds were to go for it, this would be the year to do it.
Well, I mean, I would love to see him go do it, and I don't know all the particulars. I know making a deal and putting together a deal is a lot harder than all of us sitting around a room and figuring out, well, why not those two guys for this guy? I just look at where the roster is right now. I think that you could cut loose, whether it's a current player who's a part of your team. Now, maybe that might disrupt the fabric of your team a little bit, or whether it's one of these minor league guys that's very highly touted. The Reds' future is not going to live and die on one player that's playing in single A or double A or triple A right now. I don't think.
Well, plus they've got an abundance of shortstops. You know, how many shortstops do you need? You know, if they lose one of 3 or 4 shortstops, sure, that guy may turn out to be really good, but you already got that position covered, so who cares how he does for somebody else if you've already got a guy who's as good or better playing for your team. So, I mean, go for it. Yeah, the chance doesn't come around very often in little old Cincinnati, small market Cincinnati. So, you know, strike while the iron's hot, right?
Yeah, I mean, we use a line all the time that George Grant liked to use. You don't pick the year you're going to contend. The year picks you. And, you know,
right.
Everybody, I say this all the time, everybody in St. Louis, when this season started, everybody and his brothers picking them to win the Central. Everybody and his brothers picking them to go to the LCS. And here they are. Yeah. They can't get out of their own way. Last night, we'll show it later. I don't know if you saw the end of that game. I mean, that's their season in a nutshell. Comebacker to the mound, 2 guys on, 9th inning. Guy throws a ball over the first baseman's head down the line. 2 runners score. They lose a game. I mean, it's a mess. It's a mess. All right, Doc, great seeing you. Welcome back. What's that?
I said we feel really bad for the folks in St. Louis, too.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Kind of a heartbreaker for us.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. All right, buddy, all the best. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Thom.
All right, Paul Daugherty kind of just joined us. He's writing for the Ben now. You know, the Benjamin. I mean, that's a big league operation he's writing for.
Yes, it is.